Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Thanks, Tim. Well, today I'm going to be talking about our story of how we went through our website redesign process, as well as some of the lessons that we learned, and some of the questions that were raised, and one in particular, how we started to look at things a little bit differently and try to adopt a new approach called design thinking. So, the fundamental question, why do we redesign a website? Why do we go through all this pain and suffering to go through this process? So sometimes we just don't really know. Other times, in our case in particular at McMaster University, we had received lots of solicited and unsolicited comments and feedback from faculty, staff, and students, as well as our own internal review, that the website had some issues. And I want to point you to some of the items bolded. We had outdated content, abandoned web pages, minimal stakeholder ownership. There was no real content owners anymore. Some of the people who had started web pages were no longer at the institution, so those pages were left fallow. And we didn't have a real effective maintenance plan, so there was no real structure in place as to when we should start updating or keeping things current. So this is our redesign story. So, of course, when we first started this was going to be a colossal and complex redesign project. My team and I were tasked with re-engineering most or almost all aspects of the library website. And I've given you a bit of a long list of things that we really needed to fix up. So, of course, as we often do when we have a big project, what do? We form an equally big project team or committee. So in this case, I put out a call and we got members from across all library areas. So we're talking about archives, research collections, all the way down to e-resources, you name it. And we've included people from all three branches of libraries on campus. And again, this was done because there was a sense of people had lost connection with the website, so this is one way to rebuild that connection. So I kind of felt like Oprah. Everyone had a seat on the web committee. So in total, we had 14 committee members. And at that point, a large committee made sense, sort of. We met monthly. The meetings were very vocal and lively. We succeeded in, at least one thing we succeeded in is revitalizing staff engagement with the website. People were starting to realize that they did have indeed a voice with changing and transforming the website after so many years of the site remaining fallow. And also a greater sense of empowerment that they could make a change through this website redesign project. However, a large web committee did create a new problem, unfortunately. Many ideas were expressed, many ideas were expressed, but no one was able to or willing to actually act upon them. So unfortunately, we had a great big committee. We had lots of talk, unfortunately very little action. So what we decided to do, this was a genius move, the web committee decided to form a small, active 7-person team to carry out the actual web design project. So our meetings were not monthly anymore, they were every 2 weeks. And at each meeting, each member was tasked with a given task to do, to be completed. And this was definitely probably the greatest thing that we did. We thought a large web committee would be effective, but in fact, a smaller team was much more effective. So with a small team, we shifted from talking about stuff and really to setting things up in terms of some concrete ideas. So we did some of all the fundamental steps in terms of collecting user information, analyzing Google Analytics, usability testing, interviewing students, faculty, and staff, asking them what they were looking for in a new website. And in the process, one of the things that came across was, and I'm sure no one has ever heard this, but a lot of students came up to us during their interview period and they said, well, we never visit the library website. I just Google. So instead of shaking our fists at Google, what we decided to do, we had started a process of claiming our Google My Business profile at McMaster, the McMaster Library, as well as each individual library that we had. And in doing so, we got greater control over what we see when someone would, say, Google our library. We introduced the proper email addresses, telephone numbers, and also library hours, so that if people did not go to the library website to get hours, at least we would show current library hour information on the website. Another thing that I'm trying to work on right now is updating our floor plans, which reflect somewhat outdated floor plan. So I'm working to get that. So again, in terms of experience, if the users are indeed going to Google, well, let's just see what we can offer them there while we're on that site, while they're on that site. Of course, no website redesign project occurs in a vacuum. All the committee members, all the project team members obviously had other responsibilities. Even though I was chair, I still had my regular supervisory role as well as my daily responsibilities. And as usual, there was always some unexpected stuff to come up. Other projects, other commitments, scheduling difficulties, and just our luck, the entire university campus went through a website redesign, template branding exercise. So everything was happening at the same time. So while we were doing our own website, we had to keep abreast of what was going on as well on campus. So unfortunately, this resulted in a long and drawn-out redesign project. But finally, after starting this in 2015, the redesigned library website went live in August 2018, and this is what we developed. So it was a joyous moment. We celebrated. We gave ourselves a pat on the back. And but then we started thinking, like, wait a minute. Okay, what did we learn from this whole process here, this long process? So, as I alluded to before, a large web committee might be necessary to provide a voice for people in different areas of the library. However, don't mistake that large web committee for the project team. You really got to separate those two things. That's what we learned. Project teams should have members who are active and collaborative. Teamwork is essential. The last thing you want is really people who have maybe just have their interests only in one area. We really got to think globally, the big picture of the website when we're having a team. Be prepared to encounter resistance to change. We really want to encourage all kinds of ideas, brainstorming and thinking differently. And I think this is one way to encourage innovation. We don't want to just be stuck with the status quo or how things seem to work in the past. And again, push back against well-meaning, but in practical want requests, even if they come from library admin. Oh, good, Dale is away here. Okay. But anyway, yeah, this is, again, many people have some well-meaning requests for the website. You need to have this on the home page. You need to have that on the home page. That should be above the fold, and so on and so forth. But you really got to keep thinking the user. What do our users really need? And sometimes it can be very hard, and sometimes you may need to strike a compromise. But I think it's really important to really offer that little bit of pushback at first. In terms of managing the team and the project, I was a co-chair in this particular scenario. My other co-chair, we both tag team on responsibilities. And I think we both shared the same vision of seeing the big picture, looking at the website as a whole and not just individual departments or individual areas. So that's one big thing that we realized was important. Also important, the rallying staff, encouraging staff to really participate in this process of looking at their content, revising their content, getting them to migrate their content. And also setting deadlines. If we had not set deadlines and we're not firm about it, maybe things would have gone even longer. So it's not a bad thing to set deadlines. So as we looked over all these lessons learned, one question remained. And that was, now obviously it wasn't this long, but this was formed after a while. How do we maintain a library website that responds to our users' needs without having to undertake another massive website redesign project? Now, I said before, the project started in 2015. It lasted until 2018. Obviously, there were many things that took place in that time. But it took a lot of staff hours, staff resources, a lot of planning, a lot of, you name it, a lot of stuff that was taking place. And by the end of it, I personally just didn't want to think about the website anymore. I just wanted to take a break and just maybe do something else. So we really start to think there must be another way. Do we want to wait another 5 years to redesign the website and spend another 1 to 3 years redesign the website? There has to be a better way. So gradually, we were thinking about an iterative process, incremental process of changing things. And the concept of design thinking hit our radar. So design thinking, in a nutshell, and by no means I'm not an expert in this area, but I'm starting to learn a little bit more. It's a methodology and a mindset that really focuses and puts the user in the middle of the decision making and decision planning of the project. So we really focus on understanding, creating empathy with the user. They're understanding their user journey, understanding what the user needs, unmet needs, their pain points, the problems that they encounter. It's about developing empathy. I think that's the key word there. It also helps us to challenge our assumptions. We may assume that certain things are really important to users, but in fact they're not. It helps us to identify specific problems with the library website in particular that we may not have seen before. And it involves a process of ideation. So a lot of brainstorming, a lot of thinking different ideas. And essentially, it also includes prototyping, iterating quickly, rapidly, deploying it, testing it, and then changing it along the way. So I took this graphic here from the Stanford Design School. And I think this really shows the whole process of design thinking simply. There's a focus on empathizing with the user, so observing the user, understanding their needs, the pain points, defining the problem, what exactly are they having problems with, ideate, brainstorming, prototype, building rapidly, and then testing. So as we look forward into the design thinking, how can we apply it, say, within the academic library website environment? Say, for example, understanding your library users and their needs. So in this case, say it's first-year undergraduate students doing research. Speak to them, observe, interview them. We might start learning that they have difficulty finding library resources on the library website. Then we can start brainstorming ideas. How can we possibly make those resources a little bit more easier? And again, no ideas are rejected at this stage. We just come up with different ideas. Then, once we are satisfied with one particular idea, we build a quick prototype. We design it, deploy a web mockup, and then test it with our user base. We collect feedback, and in many cases, we try to look at the qualitative information. Was this particular tool helpful? Was it frustrating? Was it easy to use? Was it irritating? Was it delightful? Like so many products that we want nowadays to be delightful. So some compelling reasons to adopt design thinking for library websites. It's really a more efficient and structured way of collecting information about our users, understanding them and their needs. We really try and empathize with them rather than making assumptions about them. It promotes rapid brainstorming and rapid prototyping. It fosters innovation and saves, what I want to do is save time and resources. And last but not least, it helps us to design and develop, I believe, more meaningful, relevant, and useful resources and also ultimately user experiences. So next steps. So looking ahead, I plan to convene a new streamlined web committee. I ensure that those who are part of that committee will be well versed in design thinking, so it's going to be a process of skilling, improving our skills in that area. Going to plan to connect with existing users and user groups on campus. So we're going to try and tap into existing groups. So whether it's undergraduate, graduate, doctoral students, postdoc faculty, and so on and so forth, even including those with accessibility needs. So we're trying to basically start having these feedback channels in place so we can really understand a little bit more about our users. And essentially what we're going to try and do is kick off a pilot, a library website design thinking project. So focus on website interfaces in this particular phase of the project. And then hopefully at the end of this, it's to reap the rewards of this new process. So last but not least, that paragraph there, I think just tries to sum it up as best as possible with regards to design thinking. The more we understand our users, I think the more we can conceive, develop and design better, more useful resources, services, user experiences online, digital user experiences. And then rather than waiting every 5 years or every 10 years to spend 1 to 3 years on redesigning a website, we can do so incrementally, iteratively, on a much shorter schedule, thereby reducing the amount of time we spend. So while massive website redesigns, I'm afraid to say, is probably never going to go away. At the very least, we can make it not as complex, as colossal as before. So in this process, we hope we can indeed put our users first without putting ourselves last in the website redesign process. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. We have a few moments for questions if there are any. Perfect.
Thank you so much. That was a fantastic presentation. Can you tell us more about the methods, the techniques you use to engage the students for feedback, and particularly researchers for feedback?
Yeah. Well, during the first phase of getting students, what we did was we really tried to get involved, be in the environments where they are located. So we set up a table in the library's main lobby. We also set up a table in the student center where there's a huge traffic of students that passes through. We offered chocolates, free chocolates, and we tried to not take up a lot of their time. We really tried to keep it simple, like just do a quick task on the website, look for this, look for that. That seemed to be quite helpful. We didn't take up too much of their time, and they were quite vocal in terms of providing us with some good information. In particular, that I never visit your website. I was a little hurt by that, but anyway. So yeah, and in terms of researchers, that's a good point. I think the next phase we're going to be looking further into that. We're trying to tap into existing user groups on campus. So there's student success center groups, there's faculty groups. So I think it's all trying to find our way into these meetings or committees, at the very least to present our case, and then hopefully start a discussion, a dialogue on how we can reach them. So I think it's leaving your office and really trying to get out there and speaking with those individuals in those groups.
All right. Please join
we
me.
have one more.
Oh, another question.
So, my question is about, the sampling of the testers. The experience and the knowledge of the testers will actually, affect, how they assess usabilities. If they are, very well know, those search methodologies, they will be very easy, right, so to get around. If they are completely new, and then it will be hard. So when you choose your students, and then do you, have some balanced, approach to select the testers?
No, it's a good question. Essentially, yeah, there's also a committee on campus that was newly struck. It's a campus-wide committee, IT Student Advisory Committee, and they group of students, maybe 10, 12 students, that they advise on IT things. And we've been invited to one of their meetings. But the group is kind of more technically savvy than, say, others. And again, the assumption is that, all young students they're savvy, they know how to use the web, they know how to search, no problem. So I think it's trying to find a balance. Like, we know that when we go to this particular committee that they are maybe a little bit more vocal, a little bit more technically knowledgeable. So it's a fine. I don't have a real solid answer, but I think we need to be aware that those groups may be outliers in some cases, but we just have to try and be aware of where are we going to, who we're talking to. I think understanding who they are, their backgrounds.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. You join me in thanking David for his talk today.
Oh,
Another one. Oh my
There we
gosh.
Hi, I know I'm short. Thank you so much for your talk. I'll be quick. I took a look at your website and I noticed that the aesthetic theme is now the same as the institution. Could you speak a little bit to the collaboration, if there was any, between institutional web services and the library and what that looked like?
Yeah, when we were redesigning the website at first, it was pretty much we were doing our own thing. So we already had our own template, we had our own installation of Drupal. But then as the branding exercise, as they called it, was taking place, we realized that if we were to start designing something, we will try to get as close as possible to the new web branding. So essentially what we did, we ended up working with Central IT to help them help us develop those templates. Now, I'm not too sure, you said there was similarities or not too many similarities? I'm not too sure what your question.
Yes, so it looks the same.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if before it was different, and then you moved over to their institution.
Yes, exactly. So the whole, because things were undergoing on a campus-wide level with the changes to the website, we ended up working with the central IT, and it kind of helped that they were physically in our library building, so we just had to go downstairs and speak with them. It did cost us some money, but we worked with them to ensure that at least, the very least, a template would be similar to what the entire branding of the university website was looking like. So again, we were already going on our own way, but then when we realized that this process was taking place, it would be risky to keep going. So we definitely joined forces, and we worked with them on almost a weekly basis. So they would give us updates on what they were doing with the template while we were working on our end in terms of content migration, the information structure, all that back end stuff. They were working on sort of the front end template for us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Going once, going twice. All right, let's thank David for his talk.
Thank you.